What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the SPY, the Nasdaq, the QQQs, and the indices, break down what the charts are telling us, what you should be watching for going forward, and also break down why on earth I do expect some crazy volatility for this week for the markets. But before I break anything down about this, before I get into any more details about what's going to affect the markets and what you should be watching for, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $3,000. And the best part is, any could be a free Tesla or Nio share. The offer ends in 2 days, guys. Make sure you check it out. We're almost out of this offer. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So SPY had a pretty decent day. In my previous video, I predicted that the market would likely hold up or even rally a bit for Friday. And we did actually get a very tiny rally. We did end up dropping a little, then we just started to push up and hold for the majority of the day as I predicted. And that was because of the crazy options chain for SPY. But now the real question is, how is the market going to react going into the upcoming trading week? And the answer is, it's going to be reacting heavily to some big earnings that are coming out and also some big data going forward. So what's going on with the earnings to start us off? Excuse me. Sorry, guys. For Monday, we have Coca-Cola coming out. We have First Republic Bank. We have the Bank of Hawaii and a bunch of other banks like Credit Suisse. Now, I do expect quite a reaction to Credit Suisse. That's going to be one of the most important ones for before the market opens. And the market's going to react to that. And then we also have more banks after the market closes. I don't expect too big of a reaction by the time we get to Tuesday. We have Verizon, McDonald's, and a couple of other ones, not as significant. But once we get to Tuesday after the market closes, going into like Wednesday, that's when the big reactions will come. Because after the market closes on Tuesday, we have Microsoft, we have Google, also known as Alphabet. And then we're going to see a big reaction to these earnings on Wednesday. Then it's just going to continue like this from Wednesday through Friday, because then we have Meta and Roku on Wednesday after the market closes. Expect a big reaction on Thursday. And then we also have Amazon and Intel. Expect another big reaction by the time we get to Friday, right? So lots of big earnings. The biggest reactions are going to be made between Wednesday and Friday because of them. And on top of that, we have a lot of big data coming out as well. Not too much for Monday. And for Tuesday, we have some housing data and also some consumer confidence data. Nothing way too big. Some building permits data too. Not too significant. But for Wednesday, we have some mortgage data, some crude oil data, which is not, once again, as significant. But Thursday and Friday are very significant days because we have the GDP numbers coming out, and we also have initial jobless claims. That's going to be very big for the market and the Fed's policies. And then finally, huge day on Friday, we have PCE data coming out. That is going to affect the Fed's policies, and we have to watch this very carefully. And we have to remember that when CPI came out, core was actually higher than normal CPI. This could be concerning for the Fed, so make sure you watch out for this by Friday. Now, for the options chain for SPY, there's not a whole lot going on in terms of put to calls, and the ratio is only 1.21 put to call ratio for the next 2 days, basically. And there's not a whole lot, right? Not too many options for the next couple of trading days. So I could actually see more volatility, and there is actually more potential for a pullback because of that, because the market makers are not as incentivized to squeeze as many shorts. They're just not as many going forward. So what this tells me is, yes, I'm going to be looking for two things, right? If you look at the extended hours on SPY, we're basically stuck in a channel. And my ultimate prediction for SPY, if we actually bring up the daily chart, what I'm basically predicting are two possibilities. Possibility number one is we just chop around a bit. Maybe we stay kind of within the realms of this channel for a bit before we start to see the market cool off. We see a big pullback for the market going into May. And maybe earnings could start us off. Maybe it's going to be the debt ceiling crisis, and also many other factors from CPI to the Fed to PCE. That could actually trigger either some sideways action and a bit of a pullback very soon. The second possibility, which is also very possible, it depends on if we could break above this channel. If we actually continue to trade like this, but earnings end up being very strong, there's a possibility that this thing could actually fly a little bit higher. We could see the market rally a little bit. We could see SPY get to 418 to 420. That's still very possible. We also have lots of unfilled gaps very close to the 420 area. And we do have some major resistance there. I believe it's still a possibility depending on how earnings go. And if that happens, I'm still not going to turn into a mega bull because I believe the risk is to the upside. It's still very risky for a lot of traders to be like betting on us just going up like crazy because institutions are selling. We have a bearish divergence developing on SPY on the 1 hour time frame, also the 4 hour. And I believe that if we do push up, we're eventually just going to get rug pulled right back down by the time we get to May. So once again, two possibilities: sideways action here, and then we get rug pulled, or we get one more push up and then we get rug pulled after that. Those are the two main possibilities I'm looking at for the bigger picture. And what I think about tomorrow specifically is we are actually very close to this channel. We're going to react to some earnings, of course. My best prediction would be a bit of a pullback. It looks from a technical standpoint like we could pull back just a little bit. And then after we pull back a bit, it will not be the end of the world because you could see right here, we did form a somewhat bullish divergence, right? We pushed up a bit, but we are hitting resistance. So we might pull back a little bit. I don't know how low we'll go. We could actually get a retest of the 410 area. And then as long as we stay within this channel, we're likely going to try to come right back up. And if we do end up breaking above this over the next couple of days, the resistance line above, we could still see a big breakout one more time, right? What if earnings end up being a big surprise and big tech actually do relatively well? So far, earnings have been stronger than expected, so that's a real possibility. Before we do get any possible like big drop or big push up, we're likely going to see a small pullback first and a bounce and just some sideways action around 410. That's what I'm seeing for now. For Tesla, as I mentioned before, technicals are looking a lot better than before. We had a bullish divergence that formed and a possible inverse head and shoulders. I'm seeing Tesla maybe pulling back a little bit, getting a slight retest of this 164 to 163 area, then holding it nicely and continuing to push up. From a technical standpoint, it's looking more bullish than bearish. It was very oversold, and I believe it's going to make its way closer to 170, if not higher, very soon. There could be a small pullback first before it does that, but the odds do heavily favor it eventually doing that. From the 1 hour time frame, clear crossover on the MACD. I'm not saying that we're going to rally like super high for a very long period of time. The market will see more downside later, and that will affect Tesla negatively. However, before the downside comes, the big pullback I'm talking about, I do believe Tesla could push up more, and I do believe we're going to break past 170 before that happens. When do I think it's going to happen? Well, it may take a couple of days. We might pull back a little bit depending on earnings, but I do believe Tesla is going to try to make its way back up there. At least from technicals, that's what it's looking like. Now, what else is worth noting is the dollar index. We also have a very flat dollar index, no true confirmation of the breakout yet. We don't truly have a divergence breakout, but we do actually have a bullish divergence developing. So far, it's just not fully developed yet. We'll see what this thing does. If it does start breaking out, right, if it breaks above this 103 area, that's when things could become more bearish for the stock market. So far, it's just trading sideways, so we have to be patient for it. For Coinbase, what's going on with Coinbase? Well, we actually have a nice support here for a potential double bottom-like formation. Not a confirmation, but we're very close to it, this like 58 support. And if that fails, the next major support is around this. I was watching 54.6 around there. So do I think Coinbase is going to get a bounce? Well, it really depends on the news because they are actually getting hit with some court cases. But I believe, once again, I'm not really seeing any like bullish divergence on the daily. Let me check the hourly just to be safe. I'm not really, actually, there is a possible bullish divergence that developed right here. So it might actually try to bounce. Uh, I'm thinking it might pull back a little and then try to get a bounce depending on how this divergence is developing, if it does end up holding or not. And it might actually try to make its way back above this 61 level. And if it breaks that, 65 does become a possibility. For now, though, be very careful with it. It is quite risky. For Nio, I'm anticipating a slight pullback first. It could be forming an inverse head and shoulders, but it's basing around this $8 level, and we have a PPO crossover with a bullish divergence. That's telling me that we might pull back a little bit and then try to hold. Then we're likely going to see this thing try to push right back up to about 8.5 very soon to test gap resistance. If it breaks that, we could go for the gap fill, but that's going to depend on earnings and other factors. But I do believe Nio is going to likely pull back a little bit, then try to bounce, and we should see this thing try to break out, get closer to 8.5, and then make an attempt to do so. For Microsoft, this is just kind of holding up for now. I'm also seeing it potentially forming a really nice base here before we get this crossover. I also want to note that there is a possible divergence that could be forming as well. We might see this thing pull back to this 284 level, maybe retest 283, and then try to hold up, try to get another bounce around this level, and try to slowly make its way all the way back to 288. It's likely going to do that, just chop around a bit and trade sideways. But remember, earnings is coming out very soon. That's going to affect it. It does have a tendency of pumping before earnings, so make sure you are prepared for that initially. It might pull back a little bit, try to get one more pump approaching earnings, and then it's going to make a huge reaction. For the QQQ, this thing is once again looking pretty much in the middle. It's not doing a whole lot on the 1 hour time frame. We don't have any divergences. I oftentimes like to look at them. On the daily chart, it's just channeling back and forth again. It's actually in this downwards channel. I believe this thing is just going to react depending on earnings. It's going to likely pull back to about 314 first before it tries to bounce. And then, given the reaction, the odds favor it trying to make another attempt back to this 319. This is just temporary. Not saying these moves will last forever. I do believe there's downside coming in the future for the QQQ and SPY. When possibly by May, around the May period, I'm pretty confident it's going to happen, the big pullback. I just don't know if the pullback is about to start now. It depends on earnings, or if the pullback is going to take a while. I'm seeing two possibilities, just like for SPY. This thing either trades a little sideways for a bit, then it just gets the big rug pull, or we get one more push up. It's still very possible, especially if earnings are better than expected. If that happens, one more push up could come, and then we form our final top. The shorts pile in up top to get better entries, and then they smack us down later on, maybe because of CPI, maybe the Fed meeting, maybe it has to do with the European markets, the debt ceiling. It could be so many things. But I'm just saying this is risky. Be careful. If there's a pullback, that could be a very good shorting opportunity, because eventually I see this thing pulling back. I really believe it's going to happen around May. That's just my 2 cents. Anyways, for the VIX, this is becoming potentially bullish if it does get the breakout. We don't have a true bullish divergence on the daily, but we do have it on the weekly. It depends on if this thing can try to bounce. It is looking like it's going to try to bounce around the 16, try to push up just a little bit, get closer to the 17s. I believe this thing will most likely end up getting a small bounce by the time we get to Monday as the market pulls back a bit, and then it's just going to trade sideways. If it fails to get a nice bounce and it just ends up breaking down again, retests 16 and fails, the market could have more room. But if this thing is done dropping and this thing is ready to just start rocketing, that's going to become bearish for the markets. Just a matter of time. We'll have to wait and see. Amazon's getting closer to earnings, guys, but we do have this gap below. If it breaks below 105, it's going to likely fill this gap down to the 104 area. It's very likely it might end up doing that, but we are approaching earnings and unpredictable price action could come. We might see Amazon cool off a little bit by the time we get to Monday or so, and then get a nice rebound and try to retest these highs and continue going. That's going to depend once again on how the market holds up. We had a bullish divergence that is playing out so far. No confirmation of this trend being broken. My best prediction would be it pulling back a little bit before it tries to continue, either retesting 105 if 105 fails and maybe filling the gap and then bouncing. But I do see a bit of a pullback before a bounce coming. For Nvidia, same thing. I'm actually seeing this thing potentially bouncing right here, looking at the MACD. There's also a possible bullish divergence that formed. Let me just double check it. There's a bullish divergence that formed, so it might try to push up just a little bit, get closer to maybe like 275, trade a little bit sideways, then it's going to react to big tech earnings. It's going to likely pull back, try to bounce, and then retest like 275, then just trade sideways from there. Not seeing too much crazy volatility, but I see that as a very likely possibility. As for Aapl, I predicted in one of my earlier videos Aapl would pull back, and we did get the pullback. Now the question is, how is Aapl going to react? Well, it really depends on earnings that's coming out in a couple of weeks. Aapl might push down a little bit more to retest this 163 area, but we do have a possible divergence that formed right here. It's just a possibility. The momentum is still favoring the bears, so it might pull back a little more than try to get a bounce. It could be forming like a fake head and shoulders. They often try to do this, where it pulls back to about 163.5, then tries to bounce and gets back to like 166. I can see that happening to Aapl, but make sure you watch 166 and 163.5 as two important levels. If it breaks above 166, it has more momentum to hit 168. If it breaks below 163.5, it's going to likely come all the way down to retest gap support around 161. If that fails, it's going to fill the gap and bring the market down with it. Now, what do I think is going to happen? Like I said, a bit of a pullback, but I think it's going to try to hold these levels. I don't see it tanking just yet. And I think that's very likely given the current trend. For, let me see, the 10-year Treasury yield, that's the last one I'm going to talk about. It looks like it's going to be a little bullish and try to fill this gap. If that happens, the market may pull back because of that. But it could also be forming a larger head and shoulders. So if it does fill this gap, this could be bearish for the stock market. But if it ends up getting rejected off where the right shoulder could be, right where resistance is, it might start to come down. If that's the case, the market might start to pump again. Maybe it's because of some strong earnings or something, who knows? But that's what this is basically telling us if it does get the rejection, right? There's a possible head and shoulders. If it keeps going though, if it does not form a right shoulder, just keeps going up and up and up, that's going to become bearish for the stock market. So we're going to be watching this 36 level to see how it reacts. My best prediction is the market does pull back a little bit, but then it tries to base. It doesn't like crash just yet. And then we'll see how it reacts to earnings. That's hard to predict. I'm still open to the possibility of one more drive up. If not, then it's very likely that we could just be done with. But once again, guys, I'm always open to anything. We'll take it day by day, one day at a time. Expect a bit of a pullback, a nice bounce, and the market just holding up for the time being. And we could still see a somewhat red day. I am seeing that as very likely. But once again, be open to any possibility, because if earnings are stronger than expected, the market could get a nice bounce and just try to keep going anyways. All right, guys, thank you all for listening. We'll see what earnings brings. I'm just saying for tomorrow, expect a slight pullback and a bounce from the market, just trading kind of sideways. And we're getting ready for big earnings. Very, very important stuff. Thank you for listening. The market to the moon as the long term is very bright. I also have some merch for you guys if you're interested in buying something like a hoodie or shirt that says to the moon or something like that. It's really your choice, guys. I would really appreciate it if you did check it out either above or below the comment section. But until then, until we see each other once again, I thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget about the fact that I have a very important Webull link for you. The offer ends in just 2 days. And with that said, have an absolutely spectacular weekend, everyone. The market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace out.